Hi everyone, my name's Lisa Ireland and I'm an Australian author of contemporary fiction. I've got 6 books out to date, the latest of which is The Secret Life of Shirley Sullivan. There you go. This book came out in May and it's available here in Australia and in New Zealand. Sorry if you're overseas, not available in the UK or the US or anywhere in Europe yet. Hopefully one day. But right now you can get it anywhere in Australia or New Zealand from any good bookstore, and you can buy it online from all the usual online retailers. Okay, that's my promotional work out of the way. Let's get down to the real stuff of Mentor Monday, which is today about craft, and we're going to talk a little bit about a topic that I find endlessly fascinating and something that is quite a topic of discussion, I think, amongst aspiring authors, and that is point of view. It's actually quite a topic of discussion amongst all authors, not just aspiring authors. So don't worry if you're starting out at the beginning of your journey and you feel confused. Even established authors can struggle with point of view questions well into their published author journey. So strap yourself in and we'll have a chat about it today. So I guess I'll just give you a brief description of what point of view actually is for anyone who is maybe right at the very beginning of their journey, or perhaps any readers who might have tuned in. What are we talking about when we're talking about point of view? It's very simply, it's whose eyes we're seeing the story told through. So who is the character? Whose eyes are we looking at when we're reading the book? Whose eyes are we looking through? And there's many ways to tell a story. And even if I gave you exactly the same premise, we were in a classroom and there were 30 of you, and I gave you exactly the same premise. I said, and told you quite a lot about the story. I want you to write a story about a girl who falls in love with a farmer, and I gave you all the details of the story. You would all obviously write a very different story, and part of what would make it different is whose point of view you chose to tell the story from, and how many points of view you used, whether you used first person point of view or third person point of view. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So when you're starting your story, when you get that great idea, I'm going to write a book about this, I'm going to write a book about the end of the world, I'm going to write a book about a city girl who goes to the country and falls in love with a farmer. You have some decisions to make, and the point of view decision is probably the biggest and most key decision that you make before you sit down to write. So first of all, there are 2 main decisions regarding point of view. You have to decide how many. So are you going to tell the story from just one person point of view? Let's take that idea of a city girl going to the country and falling in love with a farmer. Are you only going to tell the story from the girl's point of view, from the young woman's point of view, or are you going to alternate between the young woman's point of view and the young man's point of view? Or maybe they're older. Maybe it's an older woman and an older man's point of view, as is often the case in my fiction. So yeah, that's a really important decision to make, and your choice will affect how your story develops, because bear in mind, and one single point of view stories can be really powerful and really effective because we get to see the story, we get to place ourselves in the shoes of that character and experience their world and only their world, the world through their point of view, so that their point of view only, and that can be extremely powerful. But remember, if you're using that device, if you're using just one point of view, that you as the writer can only know or only put on the page what that character knows. So if there are things going on that character is not party to, if they are happening if there are decisions being made or incidents occurring that your point of view character is not there for, they can't appear on the page. The reader will find out about these extra activities, these outside of the point of view activities, when the point of view character finds out about them. So that can limit you. It can be the great thing about having one point of view is that we can forge a really deep emotional connection with that one character, and that's what we hope when we use one point of view. But it might limit our storytelling in some ways. We might have to find ways to incorporate things that are not being that the point of view character is not actually a direct part of. We have to use other devices to get those incidents into the book. For instance, conversations, letters, overheard conversations, that type of thing. But it can be limiting, and it can actually you can actually stymie yourself if you've just got one point of view. I have used every single combination there is. One point of view, 2 points of view, a whole cast of characters and point of view. And I don't have a preference for one over the other. And that is because when my story always dictates the amount of point of views I use and the type of point of view. So that brings me to the second consideration. You have to decide how many was our first consideration. Our second consideration is, will your point of view be first person, so using the pronoun I went to the shop to get a bottle of milk, or will it be third person? Lisa went down the shop to get a bottle of milk. So when you're using the pronoun I, that's first person point of view. When you're using the pronouns he, she, they, that is third person point of view. And there's advantages and disadvantages to both. Often people think, and this can be true, often people think that a first person point of view is more intimate and that the reader will be more emotionally connected to the protagonist. I would disagree with that. I'd say that you can be, first person can be very intimate. But if you use, and this will be the subject, I think, of another video, because I cannot spend too much time on this in this particular video because it's complicated. But if you use deep third person point of view, that can be equally as intimate as first person point of view. And I've often found sometimes when people use first, they think that they are, just by the merit of using first person point of view, they think they're achieving deep emotional resonance just purely by using that point of view. And I would argue that is not true, that you can have a first person point of view where the characters feels quite distant from the reader, and you can have a third person point of view where the readers are very emotionally involved and very attached to the character. It depends on the writer's skill. Sometimes I think when we use first, and I find this myself, is that I can become a little bit lazy, that I am perhaps telling more than I would if I was using third person point of view. So that's something to look out for. And I'll do another video another day about show versus tell. But and of course we need both in a book. I know that often the wisdom is show, don't tell, and that's not exactly true either. Like, I think showing is often the best choice, but we do need to tell in books as well. Anyway, going back to the first person, I think first person can be a very powerful point of view if it's used for the right reasons. Okay, so how many points of view are you going to have, and are you going to use first or third? So what should you take into consideration when you're making this choice? Really, the only thing you should be considering is what will serve your story best. I often see online people surveying their readers, or discussing what's popular in fiction. I'm going to write in first person because all the popular books are written in first person now, or the opposite. Readers don't like first person. Some readers are really turned off. First person. Some readers are really turned off by first person, so I'm going to write in third person. I would argue that's all. They're all rubbish reasons to choose a point of view. Sorry, please don't be offended. But your story is what matters, not what's popular or what's selling or what readers prefer or don't prefer. To be honest, once upon a time I would have said that I don't really love books written in the first person. I think I've probably on record of having said that, like really early on in my career. But then I realised I'd read plenty of books that are written in first person. I just hadn't noticed. And that should always be your aim as a writer. What you want to achieve if you are writing commercial fiction, you don't want people to notice anything about your writing. You don't really want them to notice whether it's first person or third person. You don't want them to notice your beautiful, sentence construction or lovely choice of adjective or lack of adverbs, or none of those things are important. What's important in commercial fiction is that you grab hold of the reader on the first page and take them on a journey that they don't want to get off, that they stay up way past their bedtime reading, that they, miss their stop on the bus. For those people who live in areas where they can actually leave their home, unlike me. I'm in Victoria in a pandemic, can't go anywhere. But you know what I'm saying. You want the story to grab people and not let them go. And that's the reason that you choose the point of view that you do. What are you trying to achieve in this story? What sort of story is it? I'm going to give you some examples from my own writing, just because I'm most familiar with my own writing, so it's easy for me to do. In my first two books, they're traditional romances, they're rural romances. So the first book, Breaking the Drought, and the second book, Feels Like Home, they're traditional rural romances. The genre convention of rural romance is that you use two points of view. If it's a heterosexual couple, you use the female point of view and the male point of view, or if it's a same-sex couple, each partner's point of view. These particular books are both hetero couples, so I'll use he and she for this example. So I used, in Breaking the Drought, I used Jenna. I can't remember the male protagonist's name. Goodness me. Oh no, that's terrible. It's my first book and I've forgotten the character's name. Anyway, I used Jenna's point of view, and whatever his name was, I used his point of view in alternating chapters. They're in third person. Now, I am going to admit to you that in this case, I did not take the advice that I am giving you. It's panned out okay, but I didn't really think about what the best choice of point of view was, or whose story it was, or whether I needed to use a more intimate point, whether I needed to use first person to make it more intimate, or whether I wanted to make it seem closer or further away. Or I didn't consider any of the things that I'm talking about right now. I purely chose those points of view. So it's 2 points of view, both in third person. I chose that because that's the genre convention. Or it was when I was writing them. I haven't written one for a while, but I do read rural romance, and it does still seem to be pretty much the genre convention. You don't have to stick to genre conventions, so just because everybody else in the genre is doing it a particular way, you can always break those conventions. I'm a big fan of breaking the rules, but it's good to know what the genre conventions are, particularly if you want to be published in traditional romance. If you want to self-publish, go for broke, do whatever feels good to you. And I would argue same for traditional publishing, but do be aware that you may come up against some resistance from publishers. It doesn't mean they won't publish you. If you write an amazing book that punches them in the gut, they're still going to buy your book. But just be aware that if you go against genre conventions, it may be a slightly harder sell. You might have to knock on a few doors before you find the publisher for you. Not necessarily, but traditional publishing, they do tend to like, they do like innovative things, but they just don't necessarily always know what they're going to like until they see it. So it might be a slightly harder sell. So I'm saying know the genre convention. You don't have to stick to it, but if it's your first book and you want to stay safe, that might be a consideration. And so that was what I did with my first two books, because I wasn't, I'll be honest, when I wrote my first book, I wasn't even really aware of how to control point of view. I learned that as I was writing that book. I was not strong on point of view, and I did the old, what we call head hopping. So I wouldn't stay in one person's point of view. I would hop from one point of view to another. Now, that's not in the finished copy of that book. As I said, I learned about point of view as I was writing it. In any case, I didn't really consider what was best for the story, but as it's turned out, that point of view, those point of view choices have worked out pretty fine for both of those books. They were both books where we needed to see both the male protagonist and the female protagonist's points of view, and it was a balanced point of view, half male, half female. And that worked out pretty well. When I slid over into women's fiction, and I wrote The Shape of Us, it was about a friendship. And this is a really, I'm aware that I've already gone over the amount of time that I wanted to speak for, but this is a really interesting look at point of view, because I used 4 different points of view, and I used a mix of first person and third person. And I'm going to try and briefly explain why. There was no one main character in The Shape of Us. There were 4 main characters, and each of them were equally important. So it was important that they equally got space on the page, that the amount of writing dedicated to each person was roughly equal, because they were equally important. They were a friendship group that met online, and so to show the friendship group meeting online, I needed to use first-person blog posts, because when you write a blog post or a letter, you don't write Lisa is feeling blah blah. You say, hi guys, I'm feeling a bit worried about this today. So all the blog posts, of course, were in first person. And I guess that they're almost, they're like letters, and well, actually they're like conversations, because in there they're sort of, it's like a message board actually. So someone, one of the protagonists will write an entry, and then she'll be answered. So the beginning of each chapter, there is a first person post from each of the characters. So 4 posts, all written in the first person. And then we delve into third person, and it's in one person's point of view. So I'll pick one of the characters, Mez, and I think she's the first character that we meet. We meet Mez. Mez is, she's reading this message board online, and then she adds her own little bit, her own little introduction. There, all these women are meeting in a weight loss chat room or message board, and so Mez adds her bit, and then she's a doctor. Her receptionist comes in, so she quickly closes the computer because she doesn't want the receptionist to know what she's doing. And we go into the third person. So when we meet Mez, it says, Mez quickly, I don't know what it says, but Mez slammed the laptop shut and looked up at her receptionist. So the reason I did that, the reason I had the 4, like I said, they needed to be equal amounts of time, but the reason that I went into the third person was that I thought, for clarity, with the blog posts being in first person, I felt that the actual chapters where we're not in the message board needed to be in third for clarity, so that because I needed to define which character's head we were in, and that is easier if you are able to say, Mez, shut the computer, rather than I did. And also, and this is unusual, this book, but the main arc of the book, each little character, not little character, they were all big characters, had their own arc, their own story arc, which is normal. But so we were rooting for each of them to come to the conclusion of their story. But this book, the group is the protagonist. The group has their own arc. And we're rooting for the outcome that, like, the story question is, will their friendship survive all the other things that happen? And so for that to work, the point of view needed to be third person. So as you can see, it's not just a matter of what's popular or what, you know, readers like or whatever. That shouldn't be your consideration. Your consideration should be what works best for this story. I'll just quickly, before we go, I know this has been a long one, but talk about The Secret Life of Shirley Sullivan, where that's one point of view, but it covers two timelines. There's a present day timeline and a past timeline. Now, in the present day, Shirley is in the first person. She talks about I'm going to the nursing home. I'm packing up Frank's things. I'm worried about Frank, blah, blah, blah. And it's also, like I said, I'll do another video on this, but it's in present tense. So she says, you know, I'm worried about this right now. I can see my daughter's coming through the door, blah, blah. It's all in the present tense. But we also look at Shirley and Frank's relationship from its beginnings in 1961, I think it starts. And in those scenes, in all those chapters, Shirley's in the third person. So we talk, because it's in the past, I talk about, you know, Shirley walked gingerly into the cold water. She was afraid because she couldn't swim. So in the past chapters, it's in third person. Shirley did this, Shirley did that, and it's also in past tense. Now, that was a really deliberate choice, because both the point of view and the tense, because in the modern day chapters, in the present day chapters, Frank and Shirley are on the run. They're on the run from the law, and there's urgency in those chapters. They're on it's a chase. It's almost, you know, like the book is the road trip is essentially a week-long chase of them escaping from people. I needed there to be urgency in those scenes, so that's why I used present tense, and I used first person because Shirley's a very old woman taking her very old husband on this road trip, and it's a trip fraught with, you know, worry and danger. I needed the reader to see right inside her head. I wanted the reader to feel every thought and feeling she was having, and I wanted them to only experience that from her point of view. Now, Frank has dementia, and it was really hard to show what was going on in Frank's head when I only had Shirley's points of view, but there were ways of doing it, and I did. I got around that. It would have, at times in the book, I really wanted to delve into Frank's point of view to see the world from his point of view, but I resisted that urge because it was Shirley's story, and it was Shirley's journey we were on. In the past chapters, I wanted those to be more nostalgic. I wanted a slower pace, a gentler pace, and I still wanted the reader to be deeply attached to Shirley, but there are more characters at play and more kind of, you know, story happening in those past chapters. So I wanted there to be just a modicum of distance and to give sort of more a gentler, easier pace in the past chapters. So that was what influenced my choice of point of view there. I'm aware that we're, you know, at 24 minutes now, so I am going to leave it there. But I just wanted to say to you, please feel free to ask me questions about this, and we can do more videos on it. It's a very complex topic with lots to talk about. But I guess the main takeaway from today is, don't let fashion or marketing or sales dictate to you what point of view you use. Let your story dictate to you, and your instinct dictate to you what point of view you should be using and how many, because what will sell well is a book that is written well and that engages readers. And if you use this points of view that best suit your story, you will engage readers, and that will make your book sell well. Just your book being in first person, because that seems to be popular, is not going to help you. So choose story should always be your first and foremost concern. All right, I think that's it for today. Thanks for bearing with me through this really long point of view discussion. As always, you can leave comments on the YouTube channel, leave comments on my Facebook pages, or you can even catch me on Instagram if you like. If there's anything you'd like me to talk about, please let me know, and I will store up those ideas for further videos. And feel free, if there's anything not clear in this particular video, feel free to shoot me a question and I'll try and answer it as best I can. Just to let you know, this Friday I've got a video that will upload. It's a discussion of the journey to publication. It's a discussion between myself and Australian author Pamela Cook. I'm going to start this new series where I'm maybe once a month going to chat to another author about how they got to be published, what their journey to publication story is. And I recorded one with Pamela Cook, and it's fantastic. So look out for that on Friday. Until then, have a great writing week, and I'll see you then. Bye.